Welcome to Normal Island Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm really excited. We have Enviromedia's Harriet Williamson. Harriet, how are you this evening?
Hi Curtis, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I am a commissioning editor and reporter at Enviromedia, sometimes seen on Enviro Live, and at the moment I am acting head of articles.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, our real big boss on articles is on parental leave at the moment, so I'm stepping into some big shoes. Yeah, and really pleased to be here with the Turn Left audience tonight. I hope we have a great show.
They're going to love you. They're going to love you, I promise. But this is what we've got coming up on tonight's show. We've got 4 stories. The co-deputy Green Party leader Rachel Millward attacked as anti-refugee. We also have an exclusive interview with her. It looks like Wes Streeting is planning a coup against Starmer. And Jeremy Corbyn is smeared, or has been smeared, as a racist again. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member. But on to our first story. The Green Party co-deputy leader Rachel Millward is receiving attacks based on a letter she sent to the Home Office in regard to housing asylum seekers in an army training centre. This is an excerpt of the letter. We are writing to state our strong objection to the decision you have taken to use Crowborough Army Camp as a temporary location for 600 asylum seekers, because the dire mismanagement of the situation is already causing major problems, and because we simply do not have information to reassure us that the well-being and safety of both asylum seekers and local communities will be properly safeguarded. Now, part of the letter, which has drawn a lot of criticism, is this. Following the briefing, we wrote to you and highlighted various concerns, quite clearly accommodating 600 men on one site with no right to work brings significant risks. So Millward is being accused of refugee NIMBYism, i.e. refugees welcome, just not in my backyard. And the attacks have come mostly from the right wing and not the left. New, the Greens Party deputy leader Rachel Millward has objected to housing asylum seekers in her constituency, citing safety concerns. Acting deputy comment editor of The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, said, "The co-deputy leader of the Greens opposes the housing of 600 asylum seekers in her constituency, and yet when pushed failed to offer a solution to where they should be housed instead. Isn't this the unworkable populism I've heard so much about?" Tom Harwood mocked Millward on GB News.
It is extraordinary that the language that she uses in this letter, I'll just read out a little bit. She says, and this is someone who has campaigned fervently for more asylum seekers for her entire political career, and now she says that there might be asylum seekers placed in her district. Quite clearly, accommodating 600 men on one site with no right to work brings significant risks. So for her entire political life, she's been campaigning for more and more asylum seekers in this country. And now as soon as they're in her backyard, she says they bring significant risks.
What the fuck is that laugh in the background? Oh, so cringe. These people are so smug. Now, this image has been making the rounds. What you can see on screen is a poster with obviously Rachel Millward. It says, "Say it loud, say it clear, refugees welcome," and then they photoshopped in, "Just not around here, please." GB News host Patrick Christie's said, "The co-deputy leader of the Green Party doesn't want to house a load of asylum seekers in her constituency." I had a brief interaction with him, and this is what transpired. I told him, "You're being misleading. The party doesn't want refugees kept in a military base. It literally says so in black and white." He responds by saying, "I note she's not offering to house them in her own home or her constituents' spare rooms. It's almost like people who vote Green say refugees welcome, but when they want them to be welcomed somewhere else." I then say, "That's a nice pivot." And this is the thing, right? Those attacking her are not going after the arguments on their merits. It's quite clear, she opposes and the party opposes keeping asylum seekers in an army base. Yet many are ignoring that and jumping to the comment about 600 men posing a risk. But that isn't how people on the right were narrativizing this, right? They have attacked her for not wanting refugees in the area. And the interaction with myself and Patrick is me pointing that out. And then suddenly they pivot to something else. Now, look, if people want to criticize Millward for that comment, then fine. But her position has been misrepresented. Now, Millward says that she thinks it's a risk by putting hundreds of people into an army base and that it's not appropriate. You may disagree, right? But that's the party's position. This is far different to what the right are claiming, that she doesn't want refugees in her area. Now, earlier on today, I caught up with Rachel Millward to discuss this letter. Rachel, what do you make of the response to this letter?
It's a deeply unpleasant experience being called a NIMBY. You know, when it comes to asylum seekers and refugees, I don't just want them in my backyard, but I do actually, sometimes when we can, host them in our house. So with Room for Refugees, we have intermittently provided accommodation for people who are just leaving hotels and things like that. And honestly, it's always been such a great experience. It's just great to get to know people and hear people's stories and, you know, find out where people are coming from and make those kind of connections. And I've only had positive experiences with that. And so, you know, it's not something I enjoy being called a NIMBY when it's absolutely not who I am. So very clearly, I would love to be welcoming more asylum seekers and refugees to this area. I would like to do that in a way that worked for them, because I don't think it's at all appropriate to put asylum seekers in their hundreds in an army camp. I actually think that could be really deeply traumatic to some people who've maybe come from, you know, places where there's war. Maybe they've come from difficult military situations. We don't know the background, but having, you know, men share rooms, like 6 people to a room. This is the kind of situation we're talking about, and it seems to me that it comes with incredible risk for those people. And that matters, right? When these asylum seekers are in our patch, because I'm in leadership of a council, I'm deputy leader at the moment of a district council, and a big part of our strategy and our goal is to look after community resilience and well-being. That is going to include that asylum seeker community. So it completely matters to me how that housing happens, if you can call it housing, in a camp. And I don't think this is the right move. I think it's a political move to appear tough guy, to for Labour to say, oh, everyone's going a bit reformy and they don't want immigrants. So we need to, because hotels, it sounded like luxury. No, I go to a hotel on holiday. How dare they have a hotel? And so they're going, well, we'll do something tougher then. So it's all very, it's very performative, because actually it costs exactly the same as the hotels. But it solves none of the problems. It sort of exacerbates them, doesn't it? We have had hotels in this area, and tragically, a couple of years ago, there was a suicide in one of them. And it's, you know, when you read about it, it's clear that some of the signs were missed and maybe it could have been avoided. And the company that will be managing the camp is Clear Springs. If you read the record of Clear Springs, it's not great. I mean, it's bad. And they make a huge fat profit out of running these sites. So is it NIMBY of me to feel uncomfortable with all that? I don't think so. And the other aspect of it, which has been honestly astonishing to experience up close and personal, is the Home Office and how they've behaved in all this. They have not communicated with communities at all. So it was leaked from the Home Office, who knows, hit the press. They had promised that they would do community engagement, that they had a communications plan, that they'd learned from previous mistakes. It's very clear, the evidence is very clear that when you really explain to communities first, the whole thing works a lot better if you're going to do this kind of thing. Did they? No, it just dropped. And then there was this total vacuum. And guess what filled the vacuum? A lot of fear, a lot of hate, a lot of misinformation. You know, we've been utterly framed by a Conservative MP. I mean, I can't even begin to explain how completely she is framed. We're the only non-Conservative authority in the area. So guess who she decided to say was to blame. And, you know, deeply irresponsible. I was at a public event on Monday night that she was chairing. And honestly, just you'd think it was the goal to whip up anxiety. It's like, so there's a lot of people who are being whipped up to object to this site because of fear and misinformation. I'm objecting to it because I think the situation in terms of that misinformation now makes it less safe for all of us. There will be far right agitators on the way. There are protests a go. You know, you need to have a much better relationship with community to effectively do this kind of thing. And fundamentally, I do not think we should be housing asylum seekers in camps. And people say, well, what should we be doing? And I'm like, well, asylum seekers should have the right to work. And that would mean that people could come and they could integrate into our society. They could bring skills that we need, actually. These, you know, there are doctors and surgeons and, I don't know, barbers and all sorts of different people. And they could come and bring those skills and integrate into our society and then pay their way and have that dignity and contribute that tax and contribute. And that would be better for their well-being and better for our communities. Having hundreds of people on one site who've all been through serious trauma recently is clearly a high-risk situation in various different ways. It would be much better if they were more integrated. So that's not a NIMBY position, is it? That's a please let's welcome people properly position. And the other thing is that, yeah, I'm sick of the narrative locally. They're illegal. It's as if we're talking about 600 criminals just sort of being dropped there. And no, these people are not criminals. They did not have another way to seek asylum other than to come here and then ask for it, because that's the decision of previous governments. They couldn't go to their embassy and seek asylum as you could in times gone by. So they're not illegal. They're pursuing their legal, like, international right to seek asylum, and they'd be fleeing really difficult situations. So I'm sort of sick of that narrative. But we need safe routes that people can seek asylum before they come, and then it will really get rid of this backlog. We could also identify places that we know already to be really dangerous. We know the situation is bad. We know that people are wanting to get out, and we could give those people asylum pretty much automatically with some very basic checks. And that would speed it up. We did that with Ukraine, didn't we? We know we can do it. And actually, this area, I think, had more people involved in homes for Ukraine than almost anywhere else. You know, we also, the same camp was actually used for 250 Afghan refugees in families, different sort of situation, when it worked well and the community did in fact get really involved. So this has been, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of misinformation. It didn't have to be that way. It could have been handled better. And fundamentally, we need to reform the asylum system radically.
Yeah, so this became a story in of itself with the letter. People jumped on it, particularly the right wing. Are you saying that they completely misrepresented your position? Because they were trying to say, well, look, we don't want 600 asylum seekers in an army base. And their attack on you was, oh, you know, well, you're happy for the country to take refugees, but not in our area. So are you saying that is not what you're saying and they completely misrepresented you?
Yeah, because I don't think an army base is appropriate in any area. And I actually genuinely think that, you know, asylum seekers, refugees, immigrants, migrants, I think these people offer huge amounts to our communities, and they are welcome, as far as I'm concerned. Very welcome, as I say, even in my home. So definitely in the area. And so it's not about that. It's not about that. And to suggest that if I have a welcoming stance to refugees and I have to accept all types of accommodation in all situations, that's just daft, isn't it? But I can understand the playing of politics here. And, you know, it's pretty low level politics, isn't it? Let's face it. But it's an inability to, it's not, I was going to say nuance. It doesn't even feel that nuanced to me. You know, some situations when you're sort of in the job of leading a council and you have to actually sort of make decisions and do things, you're not just standing at the sidelines talking about your ideals. You're actually having to get your hands dirty, take responsibility and make a decision. Could I have been part of a decision which, the other thing which I'm missing out here is that it's a Home Office decision. It's absolutely top down and we don't really get a say. But we're making our position known and we're seeing whether we've got any levers to pull. But really, it's been made very clear to us that we're not even consultees. But would I have felt happy saying, sure, go ahead, yeah, I'm in, this is a great idea? No. Does that make me a NIMBY? No, because there are better ways of doing it.
There was another comment in the letter that people did pick up on, and I think it's, I want to give you the opportunity to the right reply. Again, when information gets through social media, it becomes filtered so far down that it's stripped of nuance and context. But this is the comment you made. It was about 600 men with no right to work. They pose a risk. So are you saying that there is an element of danger from male asylum seekers, or that's not what you're saying? And those that are trying to say you're making that point, again, that's not the point you're trying to make?
I think 600 men without the right to work for an extended period of time, having all been through a difficult situation, is a lot to manage. And I think it's a bit naive to suggest otherwise. And I think, of course, it comes with risk. It's not about where those men come from. It's not about, that just seems to me to be a sensible reality. It would obviously, clearly the Home Office agree, and that obviously they are thinking a lot about the way these things are staffed and managed. And I'm saying, well, we need to know it's also about safety within the camp, as in for those men themselves. It's like the vast majority, I don't know, you can play a statistics game, but clearly there is risk that there are some people within the camp who are more vulnerable than others, or there's behavioural, you never know what's going to be there. And bunging people together with shared facilities for an extended period of time would obviously take careful management. So I think that would be true wherever people were from, whatever was going on. And it's part of why it's not a great setup.
Yeah, no, I get that. But people have sort of said, oh, is Rachel saying that they're a risk to the wider community? I think that was the point that the right wing picked on, because obviously they say we can't have too many asylum seekers. They painted this narrative that a lot of them coming over here are criminals and stuff like that. Your view isn't that, no, because obviously you mentioned a story about unfortunately asylum seeker committed suicide, but your point isn't that bringing 600 male asylum seekers is a danger to the wider community. That's not your position, right?
My position is that if people were more integrated in community, that is safer for everybody. Like, I really believe that. And that's very different from a right-wing position, which would be like, keep them out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, come closer in. I'm saying every human being needs community. This is just about being a human. We all need connection with a variety of people, and it takes time to build it. If you've ever moved anywhere new, it takes a really long time to build that. We need to care around it. But I'm saying, of course, there is risk for bringing that many people into one space who have been through difficult things. And I don't think it's the sensible way. The other thing that I meant when I wrote about that, well, it wasn't, it was a shared letter, right? But the other thing that I meant was that the misinformation and the communications vacuum and the hate and the anxieties and the fear that's been whipped up, that in itself makes a community less safe. If you have far-right agitators on their way, you have people just sort of, there's a hair trigger situation. People are sort of jumped up a bit. Like, anxiety it's not good. There can be some aggression in that fear. It makes the whole community less safe and more divided. And that really, really matters. And that's where I just find the Home Office to be so irresponsible, and actually the MP who's just been kind of blaming and scapegoating and whipping up and really sort of feeding the fear. I find that to be so irresponsible, because it makes the whole community less safe for all of us.
That was co-deputy Green Party leader Rachel Millward. Harriet, so you've heard from Rachel herself. What do you make of her response?
So, in terms of her response, Curtis, I think that this is a really good example of how, when a statement is made, in this case from Rachel Millward, there is a real flattening in terms of how it gets interpreted. It's either refugees are always welcome under all circumstances and in all accommodation, no matter how awful or dehumanizing, and that's okay, or refugees are not welcome here, they shouldn't come here, we should have no asylum seekers whatsoever, right? These are not the only two positions. Rachel is absolutely right, I think, when she talks about the fact that this is a high risk situation. If you had 600 men unable to work from any country, including people who are white British and were born here, I feel like there is some risk of potentially disorder, people getting bored. Look at the way prisons operate. This is not a good situation for anybody. I also want to a little bit address some of the criticism from somebody like Tom Harwood on GB News. Nobody campaigns for more asylum seekers. And the reason nobody campaigns for more asylum seekers is that asylum seekers are created because of really terrible circumstances. They're created by displacement, by war, by torture, by political instability, by natural disasters. The majority of asylum seekers come to this country as a result of failed Western foreign policy decisions. We don't want to create more asylum seekers. We want people to be able to have good lives where they are. But if they do have to come to this country, and lots of people do, because their lives are simply untenable where they are, and people don't make the decision to take this really incredibly dangerous journey where people die over the channel here because it's a laugh or because they're going to get a free phone or whatever. That is not what is happening. And I think that one of the really important things to focus on this story is the idea of the accommodation itself. So in our failed asylum system, what we have is people continually being housed in really substandard and unsafe accommodation. So under the Tories in 2023, I don't know if anyone remembers Bibi Stockholm, there was a Legionella outbreak. Somebody committed suicide. Somebody took their own life. Apologies, Samaritan guidelines. Somebody completed suicide. Committing suicide is not a crime. So committing is not the correct word. But at the time, this was 2023, the Fire Brigade Union General Secretary, Matt Rack, called it a floating prison. It was a terrible place for people to be. And this was under the Tories, and it was a shit show from beginning to end. And this year, for 2025, that contract was not renewed. But then we have things like asylum hotels, which are constantly, it seems to be, in the news. And we have 3 Home Office providers for asylum hotels, and they made a combined profit of nearly £400 million over 5 years. That is £146 per minute over 5 years. So in terms of this crisis and our very failed asylum system, we have some people who are getting very rich off the accommodation that they are providing, and then we have the most vulnerable people in this situation getting all the blame and being scapegoated. And Rachel Millward is now Green deputy co-leader, and she is coming up against establishment media and right-wing press, and she's butting up against the reality of how her statements will be interpreted. And if she's not saying put 600 men who are not allowed to work, which is a terrible idea, by the way, that asylum seekers are not able to get jobs, to feel integrated in their communities, to contribute to their local communities, to feel useful and to feel like they have a purpose. If she's not saying that that's okay, then she must be going back on all her principles. And it must be not in my backyard. I like refugees and asylum seekers, but not near me. And I think that she came back on that quite well in her conversation earlier with you, Curtis. And I think she was able to say, I actually do welcome refugees and asylum seekers into my home, which, if she does that, that's an amazing thing. And it does sort of refute this narrative from the right that people on the left say things but don't put them into practice.
I mean, I think you took a lot of words out of my mouth there, actually. Really good analysis, because there's a few things I want to touch upon. The idea that, you got to, house refugees yourself. Why don't you go and do it? First of all, it's kind of one of them gotchas, because a lot of us haven't done that, and that's okay, by the way. And they think that's kind of where the conversation ends. But it's a systemic thing. We want policy change. We don't want more people to take in refugees. We want there to be accommodation. And secondly, I think where Rachel was bang on is this is a nuanced discussion, especially when it comes to 600 men. And, you know, the idea that these people don't get to work, they're put in pretty poor conditions, grouped together with maybe 5 or 6 other people in a small room. Like, there's going to be this testosterone, there's going to be anxiety, maybe anger, but that's nothing to do with being an asylum seeker. Round up 600 Brits and you're going to get the same. So I thought that was a really good answer from her. It was a well sort of thought out response as well. But this is the thing from the right wing and the right wing media is they have to straw man our arguments in order for them to make themselves look better, right? They have to say this is what the left want. Right. And again, Harriet, you're right. The left doesn't argue for more refugees. You nail the point where fundamentally refugees are a bad thing because that means it comes from war or genocide, things that we are facilitating, from climate refugees. And by the way, when it comes to climate change, which the right wing want to ignore, it's going to create more refugees. These are really, really in-depth, nuanced conversations that we need to be having. And I say, you know, the kids at the table, the right wingers, either don't understand that or they do and they're not interested just to make us look bad. I do want to continue this conversation, but I'm well aware it's 8 o'clock and we've got another 3 stories to go through. So I am going to move on, but excellent analysis from you there, Harriet. But let's go on to our second story. So it seems that Wes Streeting is trying to coup Keir Starmer, causing chaos in number 10 in another example of the utter calamity of this Labour government. Despite briefings from Starmer's team, Wes Streeting has denied any coup attempts. Wes Streeting has denied leading a plot to overthrow the Prime Minister and called for those briefing against him to be sacked, widening an extraordinary rift at the top of government. The Health Secretary condemned self-defeating attacks on him coming from Downing Street and said they were indicative of a toxic culture inside Number 10. He rebuked the senior aides behind the anonymous briefings and said they prove that there are people around the Prime Minister who do not follow his model and style of leadership. Now, Streeting's intervention came after The Guardian reported on Number 10 briefing against him. Starmer's most senior political aides warned that any attempt to oust the Prime Minister over tanking poll ratings would be a reckless and dangerous move that could destabilise the markets, international relations and the Labour Party. They insisted that Starmer would fight to retain the leadership in any contest that followed a challenge, either immediately or after the budget. More plausibly, following defeat at the May local elections. A bitter row broke out after Number 10 sources said they had grown increasingly concerned over speculation among MPs that Wes Streeting could be planning an imminent coup against the Prime Minister, a move fiercely denied by the Health Secretary. Now, this is Streeting on Sky News, responding to the reports.
You know, you'll forgive me for asking about the rumours of a coup. So what is going on? The allies of the PM saying that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, the PM will fight it. So what, is there a leadership challenge? What's happening?
No, and I think whoever's been briefing this has been watching too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the worst attack on a faithful I've seen since Joe Marler was kicked out and banished in the final. It's totally self-defeating briefing, not least because it's not true. And I don't understand how anyone thinks it's helpful to the Prime Minister either to suggest he's fighting for his job at a time when, last time I saw him on Monday evening to talk about violence against women and girls and how we tackle it, he's fighting for the country and trying to turn it around from the absolute mess that we inherited.
So what's your message then to people who have been briefing this? What would you say to them?
Well, firstly, I'd like to commend them for at least taking on board the feedback about sexist briefings, because we've seen this before. Lucy Powell, Bridget Phillipson, Angela Rayner could go around pretty much the entire cabinet table. So at least they're picking on one of the boys now. But in all seriousness, it doesn't help anyone. It's not true.
Now, Starmer responded to these briefings at PMQs.
Mr. Speaker, this morning on the BBC, the Health Secretary said there is a toxic culture in Downing Street that needs to change. He's right, isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, my focus each and every day is on rebuilding and renewing our country. But let me be absolutely clear, any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable.
The video slightly cut off there, but obviously he said it's completely unacceptable. Now, some believe the briefing from Number 10 has backfired. Homelessness and prison reform advocate Matthew Torbett said, "Wes Streeting coming out of this smelling of roses. Hard to think of a bigger misstep by a Number 10 operation, even in these surreal recent times. You've actually likely united backbenchers with him and against you." I mean, this certainly makes Starmer look weak. Plus, I'm really sorry what I'm about to say here, but Wes Streeting does have more charisma than Starmer. Now, look, that's not hard, right? Because Starmer has 0, all right? The problem with Wes is that he's also very right-wing and, in my opinion, a horrible politician. Now, personally, I think Streeting is lying when he says there's no coup. It's obvious that he wants the job. Over the past few months, Streeting has, on rhetoric, tried to sound more left-wing to obviously try and woo the membership, including this: inspirational campaign and victory for Zohran Mamdani in New York City. Lessons for progressives the world over. I mean, come on! Their politics could be further apart. Now, more evidence that he wants the top job is a website domain that was registered and the landing page launched called for Wes for Leader. As you can see, the domain was also registered today. Of course, that's not proof that his team actually did this. It could have been a shit poster. It could have been a conservative or reform activist, or even Number 10 to stir the pot, but it's funny regardless. Now, Barry Gardner appeared on the BBC, and he didn't hold back.
Why has Number 10 circled the wagons?
Tell me why.
Why are they having to defend themselves? Well, the answer is very clear. Because this government, from the beginning, actually from before it was a government, has cared more about extirpating the people who disagreed with it than they have about setting out a clear programme and policy. And quite honestly, you know, everyday people looking at this tonight are going to say, oh, for God's sake, what do these politicians think they're doing? You know, you circle the wagons and you end up in a circular firing squad. That's what they're doing. And people want a government that is going to say, this is what we're about. They don't know. That's why our poll ratings are so low. I mean, Morris talks about a great majority. But actually, people are looking to this government and saying, what? What are you giving us? You had 10 pledges when you started off in campaigning to be the leader of the party. You've jettisoned them all. There is no clear programme. And actually, the public are fed up with it. And it's reflected in the poll.
I mean, I wonder if he'll lose the whip now for saying that. But I think Matt Zarb-Cousin summed up this story perfectly. Ordered David Miliband trying to coup Gordon Brown off of Timu, and I got Wes Streeting trying to coup Keir Starmer. Now, Owen Jones posted his theory on what's really happening. My theory, the Number 10 briefing was designed to boost Wes Streeting. It's almost certainly Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's chief of staff, responsible. McSweeney is close to Streeting. McSweeney never envisaged Starmer becoming Prime Minister. Starmer was a means to destroy the left. He'd be used to con the membership by pretending to be left-wing and abandon those pledges and purge the left. That's what Starmer did. Starmer would then lose the election, but the party would be made safe for someone like Streeting to take over. But something unexpected happened. The Tories imploded, spectacularly so, handing Labour the election on a plate. As it happened, despite that, Labour only won a third of the vote on a disastrously low turnout. Farage saved them. Starmer has been a catastrophe in office because he has done exactly what McSweeney wanted. Oh my God, I can't get his bloody name out. But McSweeney and his crew have briefed against their own boss, claiming he thinks he's driving the train. But they've actually put him at the front of the driverless DLR. They've convinced themselves the problem is Starmer is a dud. They want to save themselves. They know Andy Burnham is on manoeuvres and believe he will destroy their project and throw them out of power if he becomes leader. They're in a race against time. This Number 10 briefing came the night before Wes Streeting was due to do a media round. It allowed him to put in a well-rehearsed performance that boosted his chances, as any idiot could have predicted. Streeting is on manoeuvres. This has helped him, and I think that was the plan all along. Do you know what? I think he's spot on. Yeah, I think it's clear that The Starmer project was to simply destroy the left and turn Labour into a completely controlled opposition. Harriet, what do you make of all this?
So we've got a completely controlled opposition under Starmer, who turned out to be the most dishonest politician since Boris Johnson, with his 10 pledges that he so quickly jettisoned. The completely controlled opposition has turned into a disastrously unpopular party of government, and now someone even less principled than Starmer is being boosted. I hope it's a gift to Polanski's Greens. It really should be. If Streeting is the replacement to Starmer, I'm so sorry. These people are not as smart as they think they are. Streeting, there's 528 seats between him and Liane Mohammed in Ilford North. He might not have a seat in the next election. This is from Telegraph political editor Ben Riley-Smith, who tweeted, "Wes is now more popular because he's so self-assured. He took my breath away in answering every question directly and with humour." And that's in response to Streeting's media round this morning, right? And this is the really simple stuff. It's coming across as human. It's making a few jokes about celebrity traitors. This is the stuff that Starmer finds impossible because he is an empty grey suit of a person. But also, this is the fundamental part of being a decent political communicator. Streeting can do it, yeah. Starmer's incapable, but that doesn't mean that Streeting is a better choice or a better politician. It just means that Starmer's in the minus numbers here. They are scraping the barrel. And you know what? It is because, as my colleague Aaron Bastani wrote in a column for Unheard today, the Labour right has been allowed by the media to play the game of politics on easy mode, and they have been allowed from day one to do this with so little scrutiny that it is actually laughable. Wes Streeting is, as we know, in the pocket of private healthcare. In 2024, last year, more than 60% of the registered donations that were accepted by him came from people and companies linked to private healthcare. And they don't do this, they don't give people money for the good of their health, no pun intended, or a little pun intended, because I do like puns. They expect a return on their investment. And it doesn't just stop there with private health companies. Wes Streeting is also bought and paid for by the pro-Israel lobby in this country. He is paid for by people who want to serve a foreign state. He's a supporter of Labour Friends of Israel, and he received at least 30 grand from Britain's pro-Israel lobby. That was found by a 2024 declassified investigation. And he was the first shadow cabinet member when Labour was in opposition under Starmer to visit Israel. And that trip was paid for by, no prizes for guessing, Labour Friends of Israel. So Streeting, Wes Streeting is the Labour right. He is reheated Blairism. And I'm so sorry, but this smarmy head boy energy on steroids, he would be just as comfortable in the Tories as he would in Labour. He is not an alternative. He is like the Blairite blue Labour centrist choice. But the one thing I would like to say about this now is that centrism is crumbling. And all these people who feel like centrism is the safe option, it's the middle road, as a wonderful colleague that I once worked with at The Independent, who I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, but she left because it was becoming so increasingly right-wing as a newsroom. She always says to me, centrists say they're centrists because they're too embarrassed to say that they're right-wing. And I think that's true. And I think that now in our political landscape, we actually have a choice between the real right and the real left. People who are right-wing, who want a privatised health system, who are really anti-immigration, anti-trans, anti-Palestinian people not facing a genocide. They've got Nigel Farage, they've got Reform, they've got a proper party there that's going to do the things that they want. They don't want diet reform. They don't want Labour doing a little bit of reform. They can just pick Reform. And people who are disgusted with Labour, who feel really let down, who feel really lied to, who know that their promises that maybe they helped elect Starmer on with his 10 pledges, they know that they're not being fulfilled. They know they've been lied to. They've got the Greens. They've got Zank Polanski. And then maybe to a lesser extent, I mean, there's huge issues here, they've got your party. But they don't need Labour in the middle sort of being a little bit Tory, a little bit Reform, and not really pleasing anybody. And if Streeting's the best they've got, God help them. So sorry.
I mean, I can just imagine that Wes Streeting was a prefect at school. You know, head boy energy.
He definitely was.
He definitely
it just
was.
feels like that.
I haven't seen. Sorry, go on. I cut you off.
I was just going to say, on the point about centrism totally crumbling, Labour's vote share, we saw them like sweep to power with this loveless landslide. Their vote share is evaporating. Half of the people who backed them in the last election, right, they won't give them the time of day again. They've moved away. They won't vote Labour again. And that's according to internal polling that's gone to Labour MPs and was seen by Politics Home. Labour MPs should be shitting themselves. They totally should. And if Streeting's the best they've got, it's not going to go well.
I mean, I've not seen that article in Unheard by Aaron Bastani, but he is 100% right when it comes to the Labour right. They do play politics on easy mode, because the Labour right have got friends in the media, they've got friends in powerful places, and their mere existence was to destroy the left. And actually, we had Owen Jones on, nearly 2 years ago now. And what was, because, you know, Owen's been around these people, and I asked him, you know, what do you make of the Labour right? And he's like, they're bastards. They're soulless, horrible people. And I think it's absolutely true. The way they behave, and you can see it through the Labour leaks, you can see it through the Labour files. As individuals, they're also terrible people. But I think it's very interesting that Wes Streeting is seen as, probably from backbench MPs, as like the sort of light in the tunnel, which is clearly not. I do want to ask you, though, let's just say this all plays out, right? Starmer steps down in May, which I think is probable because he's probably get very poor local election results. Streeting is his replacement. You know, let's take off our left-wing hats for a second. Do you think, you know, this will put Labour in a better position in the eyes of the public? Because you did mention there that, look, Streeting is a better communicator than Starmer.
Yeah, Streeting's a better communicator, but is he much more likable? As soon as he started talking about celebrity traitors, I was like, get the celebrity traitors out of your mouth, man. They're not for you. They're for normal people. Like, I'm not a lobby journalist, and I'm not a policy wonk, and I have not been around these people. I definitely see them from a sort of like outside perspective. And I see this level of like disingenuousness, smarminess, being like totally out of touch. Their whole project was to destroy the left within the Labour Party. They did. Now they have to govern. They can't do it. They're incredibly unpopular. All they can do is bleat about growth, while people are just not feeling that difference in their pockets. They're doing nothing to address the affordability, cost of living crisis that is actually harming people in this country. I just see them as totally out of touch and really tough to watch sometimes in the way they think that the people who give them their vote can't see through this. And I think they presume a lot of stupidity on the part of the electorate, which I find very uncomfortable. And I really hope that in Streeting's seat of Ilford North, that comes home to roost. Because if there's one thing that people in the UK tend to be able to unite over, it's a real love of the fact that we don't have an American-style healthcare model. We have a free at the point of access NHS, which has lots of internal issues of its own, and many of those are down to years and years and years of underfunding under the Tories. But obviously nobody's saying the NHS is perfect, but we want to keep healthcare free at the point of access. And I think that Streeting is a very dangerous threat to that, just by looking at the people who put money in his pocket and the pocket of his campaign and his staff and running his office.
I do wonder if the wider public see what we see in Wes Streeting, which is someone who's so sure of himself, smug, and yeah, his pathetic little jokes. I think he thinks, oh God, I'm so in touch with the public. No, you're a dweeb. But thank you for that, Harriet. Before we go on to our next story, I just want to remind all our viewers that we are 5 volunteers keeping this ship going. We do this around our paid jobs. Our goal is to become full-time, meaning we can increase our content, be far more ambitious, and build a sustainable left-wing alternative. Your help has made so much of a difference already, from equipment to covering rallies, interviews. Your support literally means everything. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link to a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a member or YouTube member for just 99p. As I said on Friday, of course, other left-wing media outlets are available too. But let's move on to our next story. A worrying development in Leeds, where the police have started to use live facial recognition technology. Police have begun using live facial recognition technology in Yorkshire for the first time. West Yorkshire Police have deployed 2 live facial recognition vans to Briggate in Leeds. The technology is capable of scanning people's faces as they pass and comparing them to an authorised watch list. The force says the cameras will help in keeping our community safe and bringing offenders to justice. But opponents say identity checking everyone, even if not suspected of any wrongdoing, is a reversal of the presumption of innocence. Facial recognition is a form of technology whereby a computer scans a person's face in order to identify them. It works by measuring key features such as the width of a nose, the distance between the eyes, and the shape of a person's cheekbones. Those features are then compared with the face of persons of interest stored on police watch lists. Jasleen Chagar, the legal policy officer at Big Brother Watch, said, people on these watch lists are not just restricted to serious crimes. It's also victims of crimes and witnesses to crimes. A spokesperson for the police defended their policy. Only individuals of legitimate interest, including missing persons by key witnesses and suspected victims of some crimes, would trigger an alert. However, facial recognition technology has a racial component to it. Chagar said, 8 out of 10 people who had been incorrectly flagged up to the Met Police by LFR were black. Facial recognition has been found to not even be effective, yet the police insist on increasing its operation. The Metropolitan Police has said it will be scaling up its use of live facial recognition technology, as it reported no arrests off the back of a false alert in the past 12 months. Between September 2024 and September 2025, 962 people were arrested following LFR deployments, the force said. While no one was arrested following a false alert, 10 people, of which 8 were black, were falsely alerted by the system. 4 were not stopped, and the rest were spoken to by officers for under 5 minutes. All right, so that's them literally admitting that the technology doesn't work. There's likely a racist element to it, yet they want to upscale the use of facial recognition. Harriet, it's true that people, care deeply about crime in this country. What are your thoughts about the state using even more powers to crack down on crime?
I think that people do care deeply about crime. I think that is true. I think that my own area in London is currently feeling less safe because there are so many people who have been who are potentially on early release from prison, which is a Labour policy after the Tories failed to deal with the fact that prisons were really, really overcrowded, and that there are a lot of people around who clearly are suffering with quite serious addiction issues. And this is making where I live feel less safe because there is a total failure of investment in things like community-based holistic solutions to things like addiction. All we have is the police, and we have incarceration, and we have the failed war on drugs, which is literally not helping anybody. While I want to feel safe walking around, I definitely don't think that live facial recognition is a great way to go about this. As you've said, it's hella racist. It disproportionately targets Black and Asian people, mainly Black people. And it's actually part of a wider state surveillance project. And I know that you were supposed to speak to Big Brother Watch today, Curtis, for this show and weren't able to. But I want to just draw a little bit of attention to some reporting I did with the help of Big Brother Watch for Novara Media earlier this year. So there's a bank spying bill that's in the final stages of the House of Lords. This is Labour resurrecting the most controversial parts of a scrapped Tory bill, and it would compel banks, it would force them to algorithmically scan the bank accounts of all customers to identify those receiving benefits to look for potential fraud and potential overpayment. And we know, and we have been warned by charities and rights groups, that the most vulnerable will be worst affected by this. And the banks aren't happy either because they think it is breaking down the contract that they have between themselves and their customers. And it is a huge violation of the privacy of their customers, which it absolutely is. And this is all part of the same world where you have more surveillance and we have more computer-based AI interventions. We have more stuff that is not where the decisions are not made by humans, where the net is cast very wide, and lots of people who are maybe the least equipped to defend themselves are pulled into it. In terms of facial recognition, we already have it in some supermarkets. Sainsbury's started trialling it in September. It's supposed to stop antisocial behaviour like violence and shoplifting. But what is the key driver of something like shoplifting, and one of the key drivers of various kinds of crime? Well, it's poverty. It's the fact that we live in a cost of living crisis that has just not been addressed by this Labour government. Things are not affordable. You've got cheese and baby formula with security tags on it. I remember when, I'm not that old, but I remember the coalition government bringing in austerity, and when this really started to feel like it was kicking off, and it has just not been made right, and it has not been solved since then. Shoplifting rose to the highest level on record in 2024. That's according to the police. And that is the failure of the Labour government to tackle the cost of living crisis. It's not because people don't want to pay for shit, or people are getting more lawless, or people don't care about their local communities. There might be a small element of that, but this is because people literally can't afford to feed themselves and their families. And Labour have done very, very little to tackle it. Curtis, I know you wanted to come back on this one.
Well, I just wanted to say that why aren't we considering poverty wages as socially unacceptable, or well, essentially that, really, because of course you're absolutely right. The systemic problems are there. So
why aren't we considering price gouging by major supermarkets?
Exactly. I was to come back to you, but concerned about time because it's 8:30. I think we're going to swiftly move on to our final story. I'm sure we'll be having many more conversations about this, though. But let's move on. Now, the next words I'm about to say have been said so many times, you're probably fed up with me saying it. Jeremy Corbyn was smeared as a racist on the BBC. Founder of Blue Labour Maurice Glassman called Corbyn a racist lunatic.
This government has no clear vision, and do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is the problem. Nobody expected the Conservatives to disintegrate as they did. In 2019...
Right, but I'm asking about your government now.
No, I get it. What I'm saying is, I mean, I was part of that conversation. We thought we had two terms. You know, the first one was to actually get rid of sort of racist and lunatic politicians in the Labour Party, i.e. the Labour leadership at that time. We had to do a lot of work there. And I think the second term was going to be developing policy.
I mean, at least he admitted the entire Starmer project was not about winning an election or a project to change the country, but to simply destroy Corbyn. I mean, the idea that you would hold off an entire parliament on policy and wait for the second term is absolutely insane. Now, noticed he received absolutely no pushback from Victoria Derbyshire. Hamza Youssef called her out on Twitter. Last night on Newsnight, the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn was described as racist lunatic politicians, i.e. the Labour leadership at that time. Why did this go unchecked by presenter Victoria Derbyshire or any panellist, including Newsnight's policy editor Nicholas Watt? And guess what? To my surprise, Derbyshire actually responded. Hi Hamza, I just got back and rewatched. Yes, I should have challenged Maurice Glassman on this. I am sorry, I absolutely made a mistake in the middle of a very busy programme about Keir Starmer. This isn't an excuse at all, just tiny bit of explanation. But look, she should have pushed back, 100%. It was her journalistic duty to do so, and she failed. But I actually appreciate that she acknowledged her errors and responded, because most journalists wouldn't do that. Now, Glassman continued on his anti-left tirade and called Paul Holden's book, The Fraud, a conspiracy.
By the way, The Fraud is an appalling book. I like Get In. I think Fraud is leftist conspiratorial drivel, and I'm willing to go all the way on that. I really think it's poor, and I was around that, and I can vouch for the fact that it's inaccurate.
Richard Sanders, the director of the second episode of The Labour Files, fired back. The Fraud is a leftist conspiratorial drivel. I can vouch for the fact that it's inaccurate. Would have been interested to see Maurice Glassman challenged to provide a scintilla of evidence to support his criticism of Paul Holden's meticulously researched book. Sounds like Glassman is pushing the conspiracy here. Now, Jeremy Corbyn has responded, replying to Victoria Derbyshire. He said, "Thank you, Victoria. what he said was disgraceful, baseless, and shameful. Equally shameful was when he supported a ban on immigration. I'll continue to speak up for a more equal society for all communities. Harriet, even though Derbyshire acknowledged her error, I mean, it's clear that smears and attacks against Corbyn and the left gets a pass in the media. What are your thoughts?
The media constantly get a free pass when it comes to smearing Jeremy Corbyn and smearing the left. And that's why independent media is so important. And I'm going to just use this little chance here to be like, if you don't already subscribe to or are a supporter of Novara Media, I really hope you will become one. And of Turn Left, and I'm really pleased to be here sort of collabing between the two organisations tonight. So if we look at this smear on Corbyn, right, essentially being called a racist with no pushback from the two other people in the room who had a duty to do so, it actually brings to mind the most key elements of the BBC story that's been leading headlines all week, where two BBC top brass have resigned over a misleading edit of a Donald Trump speech, right? But that happened to Jeremy Corbyn and no one got fired. So it was a Laura Kuenssberg report in 2017. They misrepresented Jeremy Corbyn's view on having a shoot to kill policy because they edited a question and an answer to look like they went together when they did not. And it broke impartiality and accuracy rules. So viewers were presented with a question about what Corbyn thought was an acceptable response to a Paris-style attack in London, and then they used his answer from a question about shoot to kill. That was equally as misleading, if not more so, than the Donald Trump edit. But you know what? Donald Trump is probably the most powerful man in the world, and if the BBC can do anything right, it is literally getting down on the floor and prostrating itself to powerful interests. Because that's what it's done over Israel's genocide in Gaza. That's what it does when it lets Farage come on like every single programme going, where it has question time after question time when there's not a single left-wing voice in the room. The BBC gets into trouble when it doesn't lick the boots of powerful interests quite hard enough. That's when it really comes a cropper in these situations. The fact that no one was fired over the Corbyn thing, no one faced any consequences for the 2018 Russian hat editing of Corbyn. Just got away with it. Corbyn's been smeared in the media from the minute he was elected leader of the opposition. We know this. We know that he is a principled veteran MP who's held the same views on things since he was elected Parliament. He's been consistent in his causes. He's been consistent in the oppressed people that he stands up for and stands with. I am like the only reason that a veteran Labour MP who dedicated his life to anti-racism was allowed to be smeared as a racist is because of media complicity within that. And not just media complicity, but the media leading the charge. Yes, I'm impressed that Derbyshire responded on X, but it is kind of the least she could do. And it also shows that pushing back in the moment was not a priority for her, because they see Corbyn as an easy punching bag, not just for the media, but for the Parliamentary Labour Party as well. He's like their voodoo doll that they can sort of stick pins in, or a punching bag, or like the level of disrespect that he gets from people who work in the same building in the House of Commons as him. They just don't see him as one of them, and they want to distance themselves from him like as far as possible. And the media act like almost like giggling bully schoolboys, like little hold your coat merchants, being like, yes, Corbyn's such a racist. He should be suing all of them. And he's also, I think, interestingly, he's most abused in the media when he's seen as a threat. So in February this year, this is pre-your party, The Guardian ran this really nice, really friendly football feature in their sports section about Corbyn and his son. And Corbyn was saying, I've never liked private boxes, but football's really important to me and my family and my community. And it was friendly, and it didn't misrepresent him, and it didn't try and smear him as a racist and an anti-Semite. And why was that? It's because he'd sort of dropped off their radar at that point. It's like, well, he's not a threat to us, so we might as well treat him like a human being again. And then as soon as anything that he says or his positions are feeling like they could be a bit more of a challenge to the establishment the establishment in both politics and in the media, that's when the knives come out again. And that's when they start using him as this punching bag and throwing around this slur is frankly defamatory of being a racist, as though they have a complete right to do so when they absolutely do not.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that Guardian article, because what's really apparent is with the Guardian, it's like, we support, the change in the system and good politics when it doesn't really matter. So, for example, the amount of times you heard the Guardian wanting Labour to move left, they were saying, we should have an uplift of benefits, for example. We need to reduce inequality when it's a Blairite, leading the party. And then Jeremy Corbyn becomes leader, and suddenly all those policies are thrown out the window. Suddenly it's a rose-tinted look at Labour's past. And then when Jeremy Corbyn's no longer leader, the Guardian turns left-wing again. It's how they always operate, because they know he has no sort of... They're not scared of any sort of institutional power for the left. And once again, I think your colleague Aaron Bastani's point about the Labour right, having the politics or playing politics on easy mode is very salient to this point too, because once again, this is a blue Labour figure, Glassman saying whatever he wants, and no one pushes back. And also with Victoria Derbyshire, I agree, I'm not impressed that she replied on Twitter. It was just such a low bar, but it reminds me when you have a newspaper like The Sun that plasts a fake story on the front, and they retract it by saying sorry by page 18 in a small little box. It's all well and good replying to someone on Twitter saying I made a mistake, but there in that moment when lots of people watching the BBC, that's what matters. But the BBC it should be called the British Bootlicking Corporation, if you ask me. It does suck up to economic and state power, which is what the Labour right can get away with anything they want. And I think it's also salient to talk about, the big stories, or the big story of this week with the BBC, how, yes, it was a bad edit of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is obviously a powerful man, and also on the right wing, you see the BBC bow down to him. I don't even think that was a resigning matter. That's just my opinion. But say whatever you want about Jeremy Corbyn on the left, it's fine. Say when it came to the Panorama documentary with John Ware, literally concocting this anti-Semitism crisis with, left-wing Jewish people being smeared, there's no apology there. It's insane. I want to bring in Ben to go to our comments. I think there's going to be a fantastic set of comments. We've had a lot of praise for Harriet, of course, because she's been absolutely fantastic tonight. Honestly, 100%, 10 out of 10, no notes. Brilliant stuff.
So just first of all, we just have a super chat. A super chat. We've got blah de blah. Blah de blah, who gifted 10 turn left memberships. Thank you so much. We recognize the name even if we can't pronounce it. Thank you so much, mate. We do appreciate it. And let's go on to some of the comments. I starred just some of the praise for Harriet because it was coming out because Harriet's incredible. William Jackdaw went, you're very good on Navarra.
I'll cry.
We've got it keeps going. It's Harriet is excellent, and one of my favorite Navarra staff, straight away, which is brilliant to see. And you prove them right, Okay, so with regards to the first story, Natalie said, in fairness, barracks aren't a home, and I'd feel a bit awry with 600 bored men around me. It doesn't matter if they're asylum seekers or not, and I think that's probably the right sort of test bar, right? And Paul Johnston said, I won't go to you for all of these because we are kind of short of time. Paul Johnston said, so let's have some facts. How often has she got people staying with her, and how often in the last, say, 3 months? If it's not her home, then where? I want you guys to respond to this, but I just want to respond to it quickly first. We don't apply this logic to say, having your bins emptied or building tarmac roads, right? No, nobody said about the Birmingham bin strikes. I think that people should get back to work and I should have my bins emptied. And no one turned around to them and said, how many bins have you emptied this week? Or how many tarmac roads have you laid? Because we understand that we expect the state to pay for things that we're not personally doing ourselves. It's the weirdest right-wing argument. So I just wondered if you wanted to respond specifically to that bit.
I feel like I should take a bit of responsibility for this one, because I did say that it was good that Rachel Millward was coming back to that attack by being like, I actually do welcome asylum seekers into my home. And it was showing that she was like putting her money where her mouth was, that she doesn't think that these are frightening or just like people that she wouldn't want to be around, or she wouldn't want to have them around her own friends and family. Like it's not this feeling from her like, keep these people away from me and my community. But yes, I think that there is a point where we have to be like, you know what, this is not a problem for individual people to solve. This is something that is systemic. This is something that the state needs to step in and do, so that people are housed properly and they're housed in dignified and respectful accommodation. They're not put in places that are overcrowded, that are really awful conditions, that are going to make things like trauma and PTSD so much worse, where we do get instances where people are taking their own lives, or where there are violent fights, or where conditions are just so bad that people feel like they are in a bad place and they are acting accordingly, essentially. And the comment before this one that was like, if I was in a group of 600 bored men unable to work, I'd feel a bit awry too. Yeah, so would I. Definitely. If you put any people in bad conditions, bad things are more likely to happen. Like, that is just so true. And I think that, we do see a lot of generosity from people in this country, the general public. Look at how many people open their homes and Homes for Ukraine, right? And I think that, there are things we can talk about here in terms of why it was different for Ukraine, and how they got more sympathy because people were like majority white. And I think that there are issues to be raised around that. And then we can also speak about the fact that there are lots of people who want to be more generous with their homes and their time, who aren't able to because they don't live personally in a situation where they could have a spare room for somebody, where they have any space, where they have something to give. But all of that becomes a moot point when we come back to the fact that this is systemic and it is the state's problem, and that individuals like Rachel Millward don't have to house 600 asylum seekers, or however many people are fleeing war and persecution to this country herself in her own home. Like that's ridiculous. It's not a thing. We wouldn't expect it.
I think it's a ridiculous rhetoric to deploy, and I think people like Paul Johnson, I don't think they believe it in themselves. I think they know when they say, oh, you go and house refugees then, I think they know themselves that that's a stupid point, because it's a systemic thing, but also us ordinary people didn't cause refugees. States do, and our own government has been so complicit when it comes to foreign intervention, when it comes to war and genocide, as I said earlier. So in actuality, the state is responsible for these things in which we're not. When it comes to Rachel having... Sorry, go on. Yeah, please
I was just going to... Sorry, Curtis. I was just going to jump in there and be like, you know what? The people who are most vocal about not wanting asylum seekers and refugees to come here, they are usually the people who are most keen on creating refugees and asylum seekers, because they love foreign intervention. They love failed foreign wars. They love backing US foreign policy that gets us into these messes in the first place. And as you also said earlier, they don't believe in the climate crisis, which is going to create tens of millions of refugees in the coming years as our climate breaks down.
What was very funny as well, because I was unfortunately exposed to one of Nana Akwi's show. I was on her panel show, and we talked about refugees. And I said, you cannot be anti-war. You can't be pro-war and anti-refugee. You can't, ignore the climate crisis and expect there to not be refugees, right? Because, like I said, like war does create refugees. And the response was, yes, you can. And it felt like a moment when, what's his name? The guy, the concrete man who recently lost his job. Mike Graham. And he's like, well, you can't grow concrete. And he's like, yes, you can. It was such a knee-jerk reaction, but it was such a stupid point. You cannot be like, I love foreign intervention, I love war, I love, cooing democratic elected governments, but fuck that, people aren't coming to my country. So yeah, Paul, I mean, again, I love it when people disagree, I fucking love it, but I don't think you even believe that argument, come on. You can do better than that. I've actually heard better arguments than that, and I want you to give us harder ones, make us try a little bit.
Yeah, I also think that there's things that you need the state for in these situations, and that there's similarities between the plight of refugees. We've got a lot more in common with refugees than we have with a lot of the millionaires and billionaires, obviously. But like, just to put an example on that, the BBC reported on an asylum seeker a few years ago named Rayan, who'd fled Saudi Arabia due to ethnic discrimination, and he'd gone to Somalia and had a militia chase him down and put a gun to his head because his hair was too long. And then he fled across Europe, ended up in Ukraine, and Ukrainian authorities beat him so badly that he lost teeth during the interrogation, trying to deter him from going with smuggling groups. And people who make those sorts of journeys, one, they're not going to be deterred, but two, they're going to require a lot of treatment that an individual isn't going to be able to provide in their own home. They're going to require treatment for, say, PTSD, and the other big group that requires treatment for PTSD and also suffers extreme poverty and homelessness, veterans. They're two groups of people that often the right claims to not care about one and care a great deal about the other. And so I think there's a lot of strength in the left turning around and saying, well, actually, we should be taking care of both of these groups of people and just having general better mental health provision for society as a whole. We've got a lot more in common with these people than I think they'd like to admit. Ollie Carpenter said, just to be boring and non-jokey regarding immigrant freebies, the phones given by charities serve a dual purpose. Not only are they given freedom of communication, but also less e-waste. With that in mind, can you elaborate on any other benefits to society that you can see from these asylum seekers and refugees that are just kind of never spoken about? You might not be able to, but I just wanted to put it to you guys.
I think that one thing that came up in the Novara Media documentary that I did, where I got to go to my home county of Lincolnshire, which has become a bit of a reform heartland. So I went to Skegness, which is Boston and Skegness is Richard Tice's constituency. And I spoke to a young woman called Tilly who was working on the seafront on a beautifully colourful sweet stall. And she said that she didn't think that asylum seekers were an issue in her local community. She was actually quite happy for them to be there. And she thought they got a really raw deal in terms of how people spoke about them. And what she said was, these people are desperate to work and they consistently volunteer in their local communities, including through churches. And I thought that was a really nice takeaway. And maybe it's something that we don't get told about very often, is that yes, people should have the right to work, and in the absence of that, sometimes they're able to put their energies, which they do have. They've got things to give, they've got skills, they've got their own qualifications, they've done jobs back home, like they've got things to contribute, and they put that energy into community volunteering.
That was a fucking incredible answer. Just that was a really good answer. Sorry.
I really recommend, for those who haven't seen it, to watch Harriet's report. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I remember that segment. That sweet young woman. It was a breath of fresh air, going from people saying just stop the boats to this young woman saying, actually, I think it's really important. It's a good thing, and this is the fundamental thing, right? Why don't we let them work? We used to have this notion, which is that if you come here, pay taxes, work hard, that's it, right? We said that about immigrants. And I've noticed a big shift in immigration rhetoric in the last 1 or 2 years, which the right, because they try and make themselves sound more moderate than they are. They say, hey, look, we're just against illegal immigration. All we want is people coming here and just, contributing. That's it, which I would say is probably the majority position of people in this country. People will be like, as long as you come and contribute. We've very quickly gone from that to, even if you're legally here and you're working, say you're on indefinite leave to remain, we're going to now attack you. And that debate is very rapidly shifted, in part because the Labour Party have done nothing to push back on reform and Nigel Farage's rhetoric on immigration.
Yeah, That was an excellent answer again, Curtis. But I feel like we haven't bullied you enough yet, so I'm going to bring up some comments that are bullying you.
Let's bring it on.
HQ2 said new graphics update to Al Bastani just dropped because the Al Bastani is the Timu Aaron Bastani that we have here at Navarro, which is Curtis. That's Curtis, because everyone says he speaks like Aaron Bastani.
It's not Al. That's AI Bastani.
Oh, it's AI Bastani.
Because whenever I
yep.
co-host on Navarro Live, you'll at least see one comment that says, "Is that an AI Aaron Bastani?" Or when I close my eyes, I hear Aaron Bastani. I can't tell who's who. I'm like, are us brown people all the fucking same to you? Yes, I get it. My cadence is very similar. I can't help that. All right, blame my mother.
It's true because Rachel Atwood donated $2 and said, "Aaron Bastani, who? His name is Persian Curtis Daly." And just on that, what's the other? There are a couple of other like really quite funny comments that I had to highlight. But Autumn asked Curtis, "Where is your poppy?"
Where's your fucking poppy?
Yes, which is we're just going through some of the comments that I thought were funny now. So with regards to the Wed Streeting story, we Jock Pooplop McPlop gave this absolute fucking banger. Right, I can't do an impression of Merry Pippin from Lord of the Rings. However, he said, "We've had one Starmer, yes, but what about second Starmer?" Just incredible.
What about for those who don't watch Lord of the Rings like me?
Oh my god, you didn't get that reference.
Oh my god, Curtis! This is the worst thing you've said all night. I'm not here for it.
It's 'cause, what, is it because I'm not a fucking nerd?
Yeah. Well,
I won't have Lord of the Rings slander on this stream.
Yeah, I agree. I should mute Curtis's mic for that.
I mean, this is coming. This is coming the same person who I said when when I first heard of Dungeons and Dragons. I thought it was like a PS2 game. I didn't realize it was a long-running board game with all this lore. I was like, oh, is that like a PS2 game?
It's a board game. It's not a board game.
What is it then?
It's a tabletop role-playing game. There is
Isn't tabletop board game, no?
No.
It's just me sitting around, just being on the table.
I feel like I've lost so much fucking goodwill here.
Yeah, you're losing us to the nerdy viewers, which is everyone here. So please stop.
To be fair to Curtis, though, he didn't know that I was a Dungeons and Dragons nerd when he invited me on.
Hey,
I didn't know that, and had I known that, I probably still would have admitted that I don't really know what D&D is.
Okay, roll your D20 for a better host. Right. With regards to West Streeting, Autumn Leaves said, "I bet he patrolled the playground looking for other pupils to report."
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, very
He's
much
such a prefect.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait, can I just have this one? Curtis has been banned from the Warcraft Guild now too. Oh no! Don't ban me.
Oh my
Sorry.
God. Oh dear. Oh dear, you're going to upset everyone tonight, Curtis. So on a slightly serious point, apologies. I have to bring in the more humorous stuff. But on a slightly serious point, I just want to highlight this comment from Louise Burke because I think it really shows the contrast between the things that we're being forced to talk about, like coups and asylum hotels by the mainstream media, and the everyday experience of people in Britain right now, because Louise Burke put in the comments saying a social supermarket I use where you can buy one basket of food, including chicken, for £6 per week is closing in January. They can't afford the cost of the redistributed food, which is already sold at 40% off. So that is really going to help shoplifting. People will ultimately just end up stealing those items or stealing the money to buy those items, I suppose. But yeah, it's so disconnected, right, from the reality of the shocking low wages and horrific conditions that people are facing in this poverty. It's something like 1 in 3 children, I think, in the UK are living in poverty right now. Just wild. But I wondered if you guys wanted to comment at all on that.
You can take the lead if you want, Harriet.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the fact that we're in one of the most so-called developed countries in the Western world and people can't put food on the table. I don't ever want to denigrate the amazing work that people who run food banks or run community initiatives that are similar do, but like we shouldn't need them. We shouldn't be seeing an explosion in food banks. This is all the wages of austerity and it has not been sorted. It's still going on. We're still in a cost of living crisis. People's lives are feeling so hard and so shit, and we're going to be worse off than our parents. Like, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. And anybody in the political sphere who challenges big capital and big capital interests is come down on like a ton of bricks. Even people with the most reprehensible racist views, like Nigel Farage, are welcomed to the BBC with open arms because they do not fundamentally pose a challenge to big capital and to neoliberal politics and to market forces. And that's okay. Like, they're fine because of that. Come in. The tent welcomes them. But someone like Zach Polanski and someone like Jeremy Corbyn, nah, they're frightening. Corbyn's a racist. I'm sure they'll try and get Polanski on being anti-Semitic even though he's Jewish.
I've seen I've already seen the smears actually. He's been called a self-hating Jew, which is disgusting. I mean that's true. I mean, when I was with Helena actually this week, we were obviously talking about the BBC. And people say it's got a left-wing bias, it's got a right-wing bias, it has a power bias and a pro-capital bias. Like, if you look at the spread of the media, right, there is absolutely socially liberal or liberally kind of media in that space, right? But one thing that the so-called left media or the liberal media, like The Guardian or maybe The Mirror, maybe parts of The New Statesman, have in common with the right-wing media is none of them threaten power or challenge capital. That is why, at best, you get liberal media. You'll never get left-wing media because the left doesn't even want the existence of billionaires. So the idea that there's a left-wing media is absolutely ridiculous. I think it was, I can't remember the full quote, but Clement Attlee who says that charity was like the cold heart of a basic sense. I can't remember the quote, where the state isn't working. Like, charity, it's you know, great to those that do it, but it's not a good thing. It's a symptom of a wider problem, and that is austerity.
It means the state has failed in its responsibilities.
Yeah.
No, we don't leave the well-being of the poorest in our society to the whims of the rich. We believe in the difference principle, the idea that inequalities within our society should benefit the least advantaged the most and the most advantaged the least. I did just want to highlight one comment for the end. I'm sorry it's been such a long comment section, by the way, but I thought it was worth us having the discussion. Stanley Beckett said, credit to Victoria Derbyshire for acknowledging her error. I do think, I don't know what you guys think of Victoria Derbyshire, I do think particularly in recent weeks where I've had to follow some of the things she's been doing, like an interview with Zach Polanski, she has done extremely well. The challenges she was putting to Zach during that interview were far and beyond what I've seen other interviewers put to him. And she did apologize, acknowledge that she should have challenged that. And that's honestly, that's so much more than we've seen from other journalists and other politicians, as I think you both said. But yeah, did you want to comment at all more on Victoria Derbyshire? Nope, that answers that question.
Well, I'm happy to. I just feel like I've jumped in every time and not let Curtis.
No, you're our guest, man. You go to town.
Yeah, go.
You know what? Great that she acknowledged it on X, but it was kind of the least she could do. There's a low bar here, but it feels like we're always up against a low bar. And like, we have to sort of take what we can get. And like, I don't want to feel pathetically grateful for her, like doing the right thing later on. Do you know what I mean? Like, she should have done her job in the moment, and she didn't. I'm glad she like acknowledged her error on X and like came back to Hamza Youssef, but it doesn't make it right. Like, where was Newsnight being like, that was a real error?
Nicholas Watts was on the panel as well.
Yeah.
Nicholas Watts, for God's sake. I mean, like, you wouldn't get Laura Koonsberg do this, by the way, especially when she was part of the brigade that shared that fake story, the Labour activist punching the Conservative activist, and actually you saw the video clip, the Conservative activist walked into the hand of a Labour activist, right? This is 2019 election. And Harriet, I have to completely agree. This is such a low bar. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I do think Victoria Derbyshire within the mainstream media realm is better than the rest. I've seen her call out when it comes to disability cuts, for example. Again, I'm not saying she's amazing on it, but when no other mainstream media talks about it, she did talk about it. I agree with Ben that her interview with Zach Polanski, I thought they were fair questions of pushback, right? No policy or politician shouldn't face criticism, but fortunately, the mainstream media have terrible criticism. I thought her criticisms and her pushback was fine, very good. But yes, Harriet, bang on. This is something we should expect our politicians to do, not be like, oh, thank you for saying something on Twitter, even though you fucked up massively. Thank you, Miss Derbyshire. It's not good enough, is it?
One more thing I'll just say on Victoria Derbyshire is that she is in now an incredibly powerful position. She's a really high-profile presenter. She's got an amazing career. Her platform is massive. I'm not going to say she can just do what she wants, but she has got leeway here. She doesn't just have to fall in step. She doesn't have to fall in line. She can use the power that she's got, and it is considerable.
Yeah, that's really good point. Really good point. Ultimately, it's like she's good, but only in comparison to the media that we currently have, which is absolutely rubbish. I do agree. I am going to hand back to you and back to you guys, and hop off now. Did you have any other comments that you guys have seen that you wanted to bring up, just in case?
I just think big up Harriet. A lot of people in the chat saw it. I knew you'd be brilliant, of course. Superb insights, and I echo many of the people in the comment section.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm sure people in the comment section would want to see you come back.
Oh, I'd love to. Please have me on again. I did see someone say Harry's never going to be invited back. That was over the D&D thing. So I hope that's not true. I hope I do get invited back.
I'll try and keep the D&D, attacks to a minimum.
Honestly, I think 90% of our viewers won't come back if Curtis starts going off about D&D and his hatred of nerd stuff.
Why I left the left because I started attacking D&D and I got pushed back for it.
True. All right, I'll hand back to you.
Cool.
Super.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. Of course, that is all we have time for. Thank you to our viewers who joined in. And of course, thank you so much, Harriet, for joining me tonight. Harriet, where can people find you? Shout out your socials.
You can find me. I'm probably most active at the moment on Instagram. Handles for Instagram and X are both the same. They're both at Harry PW. Harry is spelled HARRIEPW. It's because I actually hate my full name, and but I have to use it for journalism apparently. But the handle does not reflect that. Most people in my life who actually know me call me Harry rather than Harriet. But there we go. Yeah, please follow me. Please follow Navarro Media. Please read my reports. Please support our journalism. Thank you so much, Curtis, for having me on Turn Left tonight.
Amazing. And remember to please like this stream. If you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.